So the other obstacle is the Chinese themselves, who are absolutely not forthcoming in a way that is utterly conspicuous. Now, I've been to many places on Earth, some of them dangerous. I've encountered people who were reluctant to talk because they feared some authority would get wind of what they had said and that they would be punished. This did not feel like that at all. These were people who were not interested in conveying information about why they were migrating. And in fact, their tone, to the extent that one interacted with them at all, was mocking of us for our interest. In fact, there was one incident where Michael Yan, who has spent time in China and all over the world, was trying to strike up a conversation. And this one gentleman pretended to be Korean and not Chinese. And Michael caught him. He induced him to say something in Chinese, and there was laughter amongst all of the folks sitting there. They thought this was quite funny. But nonetheless, the Chinese migration is not entirely men, but it is heavily biased in favor of men. They appear to be young and fit, military age for the most part. The Chinese camp, I realized only after I had left that I did not see children there. That's very different than the other migrants, many of whom have children, and they were everywhere in the other camps. So there's something very special about whatever is going on with the Chinese migrants. And it is very odd that the very same border authority that would not allow us into the Chinese camp, a place called San Vicente, were perfectly happy to have us walk around the other camp. We were free to walk around and take photographs. It was night and day different how they treated the two groups, and for no obvious reason.
Is there any sense, do you have any sense of comparative numbers, say, of the economic migrants versus the mysterious Chinese migrants? And any sense of why this difference exists? And what does Michael Yan think about that difference, just out of curiosity?
That is a great question. Michael is obviously quite concerned about the meaning of the Chinese migration as a separate matter. And, I must say, just for the benefit of clarity to your audience, my view is one of compassion for the Chinese people, who I view as living under an oppressive regime. And to the extent that that oppressive regime is an enemy of my country, I view people who are being oppressed by it sympathetically. But I did not have the sense that I was looking at people fleeing that regime. I had the sense that I was looking at people who were migrating at the encouragement of that regime. Now, I can't say that that's definitely true, but that was definitely the flavor of it as we were attempting to understand what we were saying. I don't know what the comparative numbers are. I know that we're talking about thousands of people a day, sometimes 10,000. That's a number that I heard described by people in a position to know. I also know it's very clear on the ground that the expectation is for those numbers to rise considerably, that there are elaborations of these camps being constructed even as we speak.
And what does considerably mean, do you suppose? Because that's about, we bandied around the figure of about 3.5 million earlier in the program, and my understanding at the moment is that that's the case. I've looked into the data to some degree and tried to update myself and to also view this in some historical perspective. So what do you think substantive increase means? And you don't have any real idea what percentage of those so-called migrants are the Chinese that you described?
I don't. And I also find it fascinating that that the two migrations appear to fuse in Darien, Panama. There's no obvious reason for that. To the extent that the Chinese are coming in by boat, it's almost, to me, it feels like the familiar economic migration is cloaking something else. That there's a deliberate choice to blend these two things so that people trying to discuss what's taking place will mistake one for the other. Now, I hope that's just my imagination running away with me, but the distinction in the demeanor of the migrants and the behavior of those in charge of these camps was unmistakable.
Right. Well, so what you have there for hard data, so to speak, is the fact of the difference in the response of the authorities to the presence of the two types of camp, right? Because that begs an obvious question. It's like, well, if it's nothing but one thing, why are there two processes?
Right. And I should also, just for the sake of completeness, say that we did see some Chinese folks in the main camps. Now, I don't know what the meaning of that exactly is. We saw signs that were in Chinese, and the migrants in the main camps were not forthcoming either. So I can't say what's taking place, but I can say that one of these migrations appears to be highly organized and careful, and the other one is so disorganized as to be tragic. The number of people who are being beckoned to cross the Darien Gap, who are being robbed, that's virtually all of them, raped, which is a large fraction of the women crossing through, and dying in the gap because they were unprepared or victims of violence. It's an unspeakable horror that anybody would be encouraging people to join that migration.